Slingshots are terrifying rides. Many see them as the scariest rides out there, and with some slingshots launching riders to over 360 feet, it's not hard to see why. But are slingshots actually dangerous? This question is not as easy to answer as you may expect. While it's easy to Google slingshot accident and find a plethora of news articles and videos discussing or showing incidents that have occurred on slingshot type rides, this is not telling the whole story. Like most rides, no two slingshots are exactly the same, and many different factors lead to the various incidents shown in these viral videos. The accident showcased in this video is unlike these accidents for a number of reasons. To understand those reasons, you have to understand the history of slingshot rides. Almost all of these accidents involve an older and rarer design of a slingshot known as an ejection seat. These rides first became popular in the early 1990s, and a few of them still remain operating today. These rides use elastic bands tensioned by winches at the top of two towers. These elastic bands are connected to the rider capsule, which itself is secured to the ground using a hook or an electromagnet. Once the elastic bands are tensioned, the hook or electromagnet releases, allowing the rider capsule to spring upwards and bounce until it is lowered back into the loading position. For more information on the various designs of slingshot rides, check out the Flat Ride of the Week episode I made covering these rides. These elastic ejector seat rides are unsafe for a variety of reasons. For example, they usually feature less complex restraint systems compared to other rides, though the most glaring issue with these types of rides is the elastic bands used for propulsion. These bands are the only thing connected to the rider capsule, meaning that if one of them fails, the capsule could potentially be sent flying. Since these bands are placed under high tension prior to the launch of the capsule, there's a small chance of them snapping like a giant rubber band during operation. These elastic bands are also very close to the riders, leading to another potential safety hazard. Adding to this, many ejection seat rides are being manufactured by individual showmen and unlicensed Chinese ride manufacturers. In general, these elastic ejection seat rides are some of the few rides I would actually consider to be generally unsafe. And there are a whole host of accidents, both big and small, to back this up. Again, this video is not about one of these ejection seat rides. Instead, we're looking at a very different ride that on the surface may look the same. In the late 1990s, the elastic ejection seat was at the height of its popularity. With serious concerns being raised over the safety of these rides, Austrian rides manufacturer Funtime came onto the scene with a new type of ride. Named Slingshot, this type of ride solved the safety issues surrounding the earlier ejection seat. The Slingshot used a rider capsule with redundant restraints. First a 5-point harness and basic over-the-shoulder restraint, but later models featured a hydraulic restraint with a seatbelt, like what can be found on many roller coasters. It used a mechanical as well as an electromagnetic lock to secure the rider capsule to the ground during the launch sequence. Finally, and most importantly, the launch mechanism was entirely changed. The rider capsule was connected to twin pairs of cables on each side that ran through a system of pulleys to the top of the towers and into a spring box located away from the riders. This moved the extreme amount of potential energy away from the riders and to a safe location. This also allowed for a redundant twin pair of cables running to the rider capsule, each cable being 8mm thick and able to support up to 9 times the normal operating load. This is the model of slingshot operated at SlingShot Kissimmee. The specific slingshot at SlingShot Kissimmee was introduced in 2001. It stands at a height of 365 feet, making it currently the world's tallest slingshot, though that record will be broken soon with the addition of a new slingshot at Icon Park in Orlando. The ride has gone through several changes over its lifetime. However, by the time of this accident, it had been updated to the standards of any modern Funtime slingshot, featuring hydraulic restraints and an on-ride point-of-view video system. The ride was and is owned and operated by the SlingShot Group, a company closely related to Funtime. The company operates a number of Funtime attractions in Florida, including the rides at Icon Park and Magical Midway. It's important to note that Fun Spot America, next door to the Kissimmee Slingshot, has no involvement with this ride. That leads us to the accident itself. A few days prior to this accident, on March 19, 2021, the SlingShot Kissimmee Slingshot was inspected by state ride inspectors and passed without any issues. On March 26, 2021, the Slingshot was operating normally. Videos of riders having a great time were being uploaded to the SlingShot Kissimmee YouTube page as usual. Around 9:30 p.m., 2 teenagers were loaded onto the Slingshot. Shortly after, the rider capsule was launched and the ride began its normal cycle. At some point during this cycle, one of the two cables on the right side of the ride snapped. The second cable on this side stayed intact, and the capsule eventually came to rest around 35 feet in the air near the right tower. The capsule never impacted the tower. Roughly 2 hours later, fire crews were able to get the two teens back on the ground. They suffered no injuries. Following this, the Slingshot and all other SlingShot Group slingshots were closed for an investigation. Details on this investigation are scarce, and all SlingShot Group rides reopened on March 30th, including the now repaired Kissimmee Slingshot. So what happened here? The details are definitely not clear, but with my experience working the 360-foot fun time slingshot at Cedar Point, combined with carefully analyzing videos posted by SlingShot Kissimmee before the accident, I've put together a possible explanation that would explain the rapid reopening of these attractions. Keep in mind, this is all just an educated guess on what happened, and none of this is confirmed to be true. I don't believe that lack of maintenance was responsible for this accident, as the ride passed a state inspection just a few days prior. Instead, I believe that operator error caused this accident. Let me explain. On each side of a Funtime Slingshot's rider capsule, there are two cables that connect to the top pulley assembly and the spring box. These cables are connected to the capsule by a device known as a swivel. The purpose of the swivel is to prevent the cables from twisting around each other when the rider capsule flips due to rider weight or high winds. However, these swivels are not perfect, so before each ride cycle, the cables are to be visually inspected by the operator to ensure they are not twisted. The ride operator can also remove twists in the cable by twisting the swivel. In videos taken before the accident, operators seem to check these cables sporadically. When the cables were checked, they seemed to do it after the spring box was already at launch power. This is interesting, as twists in the cables would be both harder to notice and harder to remove at this point. By the night of March 25th, operators did not seem to be checking the cables at all. March 25th is the last night where footage from the Slingshot is publicly available before the accident. Winds on the 26th were also near 15 miles per hour, just enough to cause a bit more flipping of the rider capsule than normal. It's my guess that the cables on the right side of the Slingshot became significantly crossed and twisted. After the rider capsule was launched, the force exerted on the cables combined with the friction caused by the two cables moving against each other caused one of the cables to snap. The remaining cable worked as intended and all failsafes worked as designed, keeping the riders safe. However, this accident was entirely preventable. All it would have taken was an operator stopping to perform the checks they are always supposed to do prior to each ride cycle. For the cables to become crossed over each other so much that one would snap, the ride would have to cycle many times with the cables not being checked. All of this, of course, assumes that my prediction here is correct, but sadly my prediction may be all we ever get, as ride accident reports are not public in the state of Florida. As for SlingShot Group rides, I would love to say that their operations have improved since this accident. Sadly, that's not necessarily the case. I visited SlingShot Kissimmee in September 2020 and observed several operators on their phones while working, as well as operators walking away from moving rides. When I returned both in September and November of this year, 2021, it was like nothing had changed. The footage you're seeing now of an operator on their phone in position was shot in April of this year. As for Slingshot cable inspections, I'm not exactly sure, as newer videos do not seem to show the cable inspection I mentioned earlier in this video. This may just be due to the operators checking the cables at a different time. At Cedar Point, for example, we check our Slingshot's cables shortly after the rider capsule has parked. If SlingShot Kissimmee operators are doing this, the on-ride video published to their YouTube channel likely would not show it. However, there is a slim chance that this close call accident changed nothing. That's all I have for this video. If you have any experiences with SlingShot Group attractions, please share them in the comments. I'm interested to hear what experiences others have had. I have a full list of attractions they operate listed below. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.